I came home early from a business trip to find my wife gone. I walked through the front door of our house a day earlier than planned, eager to surprise Emma. The flight back from Chicago had been long and exhausting, but I was looking forward to spending a quiet evening together. What I didn't expect was the stillness that hit me as soon as I stepped inside. The house was eerily silent. No sound of her music, no scent of her candles filling the air. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but that wasn't entirely unusual. She had started spending more time at the yoga studio lately. Still, something felt wrong. I called out her name, but there was no reply. The silence felt suffocating. I stepped further into the house, each step more hesitant than the last. When I reached the bedroom, my heart stopped. Her side of the closet, empty. No clothes, no shoes, not even a stray piece of jewelry. It wasn't the usual chaos of her trying to pick out an outfit for the day. No, this was intentional, every single thing gone. Even her favorite skincare products were missing from the bathroom, the space where her perfume once lingered now strangely devoid of her presence. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. It didn't make sense. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed her number, hoping to hear her voice, to make sense of what I was seeing. But the call went straight to voicemail. That's when the text arrived. I'm leaving. I'm moving in with someone more successful. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. I felt the ground beneath me shift. I sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, trying to process the words. Everything in me screamed for an explanation, but there was no time for that. The world around me seemed to spin, and I couldn't get a grip. But somehow, I didn't fall apart like I thought I would. I didn't let the panic take over. Instead, I did the one thing that made sense in that moment. I called my lawyer. 3 days ago, my life was normal. The same routine, the same quiet evenings spent together, sharing meals, talking about our day. But now, as I sat in the half-empty room that used to be our sanctuary, I couldn't help but replay every moment in my mind. Had I missed the signs? Had everything been right in front of me, and I was just too blind to see it? I had been so focused on work, on deadlines, meetings, and the constant pressure to do more. I had thought our life together was fine. But now I wondered if I'd been living in a bubble, unaware of how far Emma had drifted from me. I tried to remember the little things. The casual comments she made about my career. How I wasn't as ambitious as I should be. How Nathan, her colleague, seemed to have it all together. The business trips he took, the luxury car he drove, the shiny apartment that looked straight out of an Instagram ad. She'd always compare us to him, like he was the standard we couldn't measure up to. And yet, I had tried to convince her that we were doing okay. That we didn't need to chase after what everyone else had. We were building something real, something that mattered. But no matter what I said, she just seemed disappointed. Her new routine didn't help. I noticed her spending more time at the gym, joining that upscale yoga studio I never liked. She started coming home later, her clothes smelling like expensive cologne, like she was hiding something from me. And the conversations, always about the right connections, the people who made it big in life, how those were the ones who truly mattered. It was as if she was ashamed of us. Ashamed of what we had built together, ashamed of me. The worst part? I was so caught up in my own world, so wrapped up in just trying to keep everything afloat, that I couldn't see it. The signs were there all along, but I refused to acknowledge them. I had been blind. Before I share what happened next, the moment that made everything fall into place, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight to keep something you believed in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I did what I knew had to be done. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. She had already made her choice, and I wasn't about to make mine harder by chasing after her. The first thing I did was call Henry, my lawyer. I calmly explained the situation, as if this wasn't shattering my world. He listened patiently, and we set up a time to meet. After that, I turned to the next step. I started documenting everything, every detail. I took photos of the empty shelves where her things used to be, of the bare spots in our bedroom where her presence once filled the space. I needed proof, something concrete to hold on to. It was hard, but I did it. I had to. I opened my phone and sent her a single text, noted. My lawyer will be in touch. I didn't ask for an explanation, didn't try to reason with her. I knew better now. Then, I sat down at my desk, my fingers hovering over the keys. The feeling in my chest was cold, sharp, but clear. I needed to think. So, I started making a list. I went over our finances, our shared accounts, our lease, our phone plan, everything that needed to be sorted out. This wasn't just about a relationship falling apart, this was about protecting myself and making sure I wasn't left with nothing. By the time I poured myself a glass of whiskey, I had a plan. A clear, simple plan. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel lost. I felt focused. Around 8 that night, Sarah's mom called. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to her. She'd have to figure this out on her own. I already had enough on my plate. Then, the texts from Sarah started coming in. One after another, desperate, frantic. She didn't understand why I wasn't responding. Jeremy, please, we need to talk. You're acting so cold. You're being manipulative by ignoring me. I stared at the screen, my hand gripping the phone a little too tightly. The nerve of her, trying to turn it around on me. Trying to make me the villain when I was the one left behind. But I didn't reply. I wasn't going to feed into it. I turned off my notifications and kept working. The hours passed in silence. Midnight came, and I was still sitting there, eyes glued to the screen, checking our accounts, sorting through what was mine and what was hers. Her name was still on everything. Our joint accounts, the credit cards, the utilities, she had made a mistake, a rookie mistake. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just about the divorce. It was about taking back control of my life. And I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all her, take that away from me. The next day, as I sat at my kitchen table, going through the motions of my new routine, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Rachel, Sarah's sister. I hadn't expected to hear from her, but I picked up anyway. Jeremy, I'm so sorry, Rachel's voice trembled on the other end. I should have warned you. This is a pattern with Sarah. She did the same thing to her ex. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Her words hit harder than I anticipated. She left him for someone who could offer more, Rachel continued. Someone with more money, more ambition. That relationship fell apart when she realized the guy was all show, more interested in status than in being a real person. The coldness in her voice echoed in my head as she spoke. A pattern. That was what this had been all along. I had been so caught up in my own life, so blind to what was happening, that I had missed the signs. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place now, but it felt like too little, too late. I barely reacted. Her words didn't shock me anymore, but they stung all the same. I should have known, shouldn't I? I should have seen it coming. But I hadn't. And then came the second bombshell. Sarah's mom called me again. The familiar number flashed on my phone screen, and for a second, I hesitated. I didn't want to hear it. But something pushed me to pick up. Jeremy, I need to talk to you, her voice sounded tired, almost defeated. I never wanted it to be like this. But I have to admit something. I braced myself. I could feel the heaviness of the moment settling in. Sarah's always been like this, her mom confessed, a trace of regret in her voice. She's always traded up. She surrounds herself with people based on their wealth, their success. I had hoped she'd find stability with you, that you'd be the one to ground her. But I see now, you were just her settling a phase. Her words landed like a slap. I had been nothing more than a stepping stone, a bridge to something better. I took a slow breath, letting it sink in. You really think that? I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. Yes, she admitted, her voice thick with a sadness I couldn't ignore. I had hoped she would change, that you'd be the one to show her that love and life weren't just about money and status. But I see now, I was wrong. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Sarah's mom didn't want this for me, but she had already made her peace with it. It wasn't my fault, but it felt like it was. I sat there, silent for a long moment, as everything I thought I knew about our relationship unraveled. Sarah wasn't just leaving me for someone else, she was leaving me because I couldn't give her what she truly wanted. And that realization hit me harder than anything else. I didn't know what to say to her mom, so I didn't say anything at all. I simply ended the call and set the phone down, my hands trembling slightly as I looked around the room. It was over. All of it. But I wasn't going to let this define me. Not anymore. For the first time in what felt like ages, I finally felt in control. The storm that had torn through my life was settling, and I was beginning to reclaim the pieces that were mine. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore, it was about owning my future. I wasn't going to let Sarah's decisions shape my path any longer. I started with the locks. The first click of the new key turned a page in my life. No more shared access to my home, no more uncertainty about who had a right to walk through that door. Then, I moved on to the finances. I froze our joint credit cards, leaving her portion open, but making sure she couldn't make any more purchases. There was no way I was going to let her drain what little was left. I changed our bank account details and locked everything down. I even went as far as canceling our Netflix subscription. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about asserting my control. With each change, each decision, the weight lifted from my chest. I felt lighter, like I was finally free from the burden of her expectations and the chaos she dragged me into. The more I took charge, the more clarity I gained. It was as if the fog that had clouded my judgment for months was finally lifting, and I could see everything clearly. Meanwhile, Sarah was busy curating her new life on social media, posting perfectly staged photos of her new beginnings. The smiling selfies, the glamorous brunches, the hashtags about living her best life, it was all a performance, a facade. But as she crafted her image, reality was quietly catching up with her. She couldn't access her old accounts. The passwords she'd forgotten were a barrier she hadn't planned for. She had left behind everything, her birth certificate, her passport, her social security card, locked away in the safe. She had been so focused on her escape that she didn't think ahead. Now, she was stuck, and it was her mess to clean up. And that's when I realized she hadn't planned for any of this. She had rushed out, thinking the grass was greener on the other side, but she hadn't considered the consequences. I was done cleaning up after her. Now, it was her turn to deal with the fallout. A few weeks passed, and everything slowly began to fall into place. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The weight that had burdened me for so long was finally lifting, and I felt like I was reclaiming my life in ways I hadn't expected. At work, I received a promotion. It came out of nowhere, but I wasn't going to complain. My focus during a company crisis had caught the attention of my bosses, and while everyone else was distracted, I had kept my head down and pushed through. I didn't stop there, though. I started going to the gym regularly. At first, it was just a way to clear my head, but soon, it became more. I shed a few pounds, got back into shape, and for the first time in a long while, I actually felt good about myself again. I had a sense of control over my body, my health, and my life that I hadn't realized I had been missing. Then, unexpectedly, I met someone new. Her name is Ellie, and she's wonderful. A pediatric nurse with a laugh that's infectious, and a sense of humor that's equal parts silly and sweet. We clicked instantly. There was something refreshing about her. It was early, just the beginning, but for the first time in months, I found myself looking forward to the future. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed feeling excited about something, anything, until I met her. We're taking things slow, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I was stuck in the past. Meanwhile, Sarah's world wasn't quite as smooth as she had hoped. Nathan's so-called perfect life was starting to unravel, piece by piece. The luxury apartment he had been renting? It was in foreclosure. That shiny business success he had promised? A total sham. And Sarah, in all her rush to chase after him, found herself stuck. She couldn't even get a job, not because she wasn't qualified, but because she couldn't access the documents she needed, her birth certificate, passport, everything she had left behind in the safe. Her life was slipping through her fingers, and all she had left were her posts on social media, posts that had once been filled with pictures of expensive meals, exotic vacations, and perfect, staged moments. Now, they were filled with captions about self-pity, desperation, and how life never goes as planned. It was hard not to feel a little satisfaction knowing she was caught in the mess she had created. She had thought the grass was greener, that jumping ship would lead to a better life, but the truth was she had jumped straight into chaos. She had been so focused on chasing an illusion that she never saw the cracks forming beneath her feet. And now, those cracks were swallowing her whole. One afternoon, Ellie and I were out at a quiet cafe, enjoying a peaceful lunch together when something caught my eye. Across the room, I saw her, Sarah. She was sitting with a friend, her gaze fixed on us. I could feel the tension in the air as she stared. I noticed the confusion in her eyes, the way she tried to look away when she realized I had seen her. But it was obvious, she was watching, waiting for some reaction from me. Ellie, ever the calm and collected one, didn't seem to notice the shift in my demeanor. I was already lost in my thoughts, thinking about everything that had led us here. But as much as I tried to keep my focus on Ellie, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was still watching us, still trying to piece together the fragments of our past. Later that evening, as I settled in at home with Ellie, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, already knowing who it was. The message was short, but the words hit hard. "I can't believe you moved on so quickly. Who is she? We need to talk about us." I felt a tight knot form in my chest. Part of me wanted to respond, to say something sharp, something to let her know how much she had hurt me. But I didn't. Instead, I forwarded the text to my lawyer, Henry. Let him deal with it. This was no longer between Sarah and me, it was between lawyers now. I put the phone down, deciding to move on with my evening. Ellie didn't press me for details, and I appreciated that. She understood that some battles were best fought from a distance. The next morning, as I was walking into the office, I saw her again. Sarah was standing outside the building, her eyes red, her face streaked with tears. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The sight of her hit me harder than I expected, but I didn't let it show. I kept walking, keeping my head straight, ignoring the pleading look in her eyes. She called after me, but I didn't stop. I wasn't going to be swayed by her emotions, not this time. I walked past her, stepped inside the building, and went straight to my office. As soon as I sat down at my desk, my phone rang. It was her again. I let it go to voicemail. But I knew what was coming. I called Henry. "She's outside," I said, my voice steady. "What do I do?" "Send her a clear message, Jeremy," he said, without hesitation. "All communication must go through legal representatives from now on. Don't engage with her directly." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief in his words. The finality of it was clear. I wasn't going to fall for her manipulations anymore. I wasn't going to give her the chance to make me question my choices. I took a deep breath and sent Sarah a text. All communication must go through legal representatives. It felt good, actually, empowering. A simple sentence, but it marked the end of any hope that she had left of manipulating me back into her life. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to move forward. The next few hours were tense. I didn't check my phone, didn't give in to the temptation to see what she would say. Instead, I focused on work, on the life I was building without her. The more I pushed her out, the clearer my path became. Sarah had tried to come back, tried to make me feel guilty for moving on so quickly. But in the end, I knew it wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the future. And for the first time in a long while, I was finally ready to face it. The final straw came during the document exchange. Sarah showed up at my lawyer's office, and to my surprise, Nathan was with her. I could feel the tension in the air the moment they walked in. Nathan, trying to look like the supportive partner, stood behind her like some kind of shield. But it didn't matter. I wasn't intimidated. The confrontation wasn't pretty. Sarah tried to manipulate the situation, trying to twist the narrative, make it seem like I was the one who had wronged her. She tried to pull at my emotions, hoping I would break. But I stayed calm. I didn't engage in her games. I simply reminded her of the choices she had made. The choices that had led us here, to this moment. She had walked away from everything we built, and now she had to face the consequences. When the exchange was over, I felt relieved. Not vindicated, not satisfied, but free. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long was finally lifting. The divorce was almost final, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. The chapter with Sarah was closing, and my life was moving forward. Over the past few weeks, Ellie and I had been talking about taking the next step. We were looking at places together, something simple but ours. A fresh start. Maybe we'd get a cat, too, just to make the place feel more like home. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future held. It felt good to be moving in a direction that was my own, one that didn't involve looking back. As for Sarah, her social media meltdown continued. She posted screenshots of our old conversations, tried to paint herself as the victim in the story. But the truth was clear to me now. This was her pattern, this was who she was. I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her anymore. I was done. The divorce was finalized last week. It was official, and everything was handled properly. I had come through the process with a new sense of strength, a clearer understanding of myself and what I wanted from life. The lessons I learned weren't easy, but they had shaped me into someone who was stronger, more resilient. Life isn't about chasing perfect moments or trying to live up to someone else's expectations. It's about finding your own path, respecting yourself, and building meaningful connections with the right people. I had spent too long trying to fit into a version of life that wasn't mine. But now, I was finally free. As for Sarah, I honestly hope she finds what she's looking for. But as for me? I'm at peace. And for the first time in a long time, I'm truly looking forward to the future.